Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Even If podcast. I'm your host, Kristi Lowe, and I am always so glad when we can spend some time together. If you've been tracking along with us this summer, you know that we are starting a new series today called An Even If Kind of Faith. And y'all, I'll just be honest with you, I have been crazy excited about starting this. I'm filled with an anticipation, a trepidation, there is a feeling inside of me and an energy that I can't quite even contain. I am full up, for lack of a better word, and I am so excited for us to get started. I've got to give a trigger warning before we start today, because something that's going to come into the conversation today is going to be alcohol, and we're going to talk a little bit about addiction today. So if any of that is something that you need to be careful of, or if it would jeopardize recovery of any sort within you, I need to give you a permission slip to just skip today and then meet us back again next week, because I would never want to jeopardize anybody's health or their recovery. And so I just want to go ahead and give that disclaimer before we start. The other disclaimer I want to give before we start is that we are talking alcohol is going to be part of our conversation today. It's part of my story, and it's part of just what I've seen God do in my life. And so the other camp, for lack of a better term, might be somebody who thinks that alcohol has absolutely no place within Christian culture or on a Christian podcast. And so if you're in that camp where alcohol is a hard pass for you, like you're just that, it's a hard stop. No, thank you, ma'am. I'm gonna ask you to do something for me today. If you would approach today's episode with a little bit of compassion and curiosity, I think you're going to hear something. I think there's going to be something for everybody here, regardless of your thoughts about alcohol. There may be somebody in your life who is struggling, and today's episode might help you if you ever need to have a conversation with them, or if they ever come to you to talk about things. So it might give you a little bit of compassion. It might give you a little bit of a way to see what somebody else's struggles might be. So I just encourage you to listen today with a little bit of compassion and curiosity and see what God does in your spirit. So not asking anybody to change their denominational or theological thoughts. I have absolutely no desire to do that, to offend anybody. That's not my heart at all. And so I think it's just a conversation that we need to have more transparency in, because alcohol consumption is part of a lot of people's lives, and it's part of my story. So we're going to talk pretty openly about it. So without further ado, let's dive in. First of all, if you are watching this on YouTube, you may have already noticed that something feels a little bit different. Well, it's because I am so full up excited about today that I could not sit down and do this podcast. I couldn't sit and record. So I have modified my whole setup in here so that I can stand up. I have realized, like, I talk with my hands, and I was afraid I was going to knock stuff off my desk. So I was like, I need more room to run. Okay. And so I've made myself a bigger playpen today, for lack of a better word. But we're starting this new series, and it's called An Even If Kind of Faith. I think you've heard me say it like 85 times, but get used to it, because I want it ingrained in our memory. I want this to become something that just becomes part of us, because an even if kind of faith. I wonder what that in your mind, what's conjured up in your mind when you hear that phrase, an even if kind of faith. What comes to mind? I have to tell you the coolest thing. When I was prepping for this, and I was kind of sitting with the Lord about that, and I was like, Lord, I think I need to give him a definition. And just like God is so much better and more gracious, and he blows my mind. He blows my socks off. Instead of a definition, I'm standing there and I'm thinking about it, and I don't do this very often, so I know it was only him. But he gave me a vision of what an even if faith looks like. And I have to share it with you because I think it encapsulates what we're trying to get to. Okay. So if you're sitting somewhere, close your eyes. And if you're driving, please don't close your eyes. But I want you to imagine, with your eyes closed or open, I want you in your mind to imagine a really, really, really busy street. And you're on the sidewalk. And maybe it's like New York. There's lights, there's music. You can hear music. The wind is blowing. Okay, imagine this with me, okay? You are on this busy street. There are thousands and thousands of people. There are cars jam-packed right beside you, coming and going. It's the busiest, most chaotic, coming and going. And this wind, there is wind just blowing hard wind. If you're from West Texas, it's not going to take you how long to understand what a hard wind is. But overhead, when you look up, the sky is gray and it is getting darker and darker by the minute. And you know a storm is coming. And suddenly you can feel this wind and the sky is getting darker and there's all these people around you and noise and the rain starts coming down. And it's not like soft rain. It's that rain that like stings whenever it hits you. It like pelts you really hard. And it starts coming down in really hard drops. Like those drops that just like prick your skin whenever they hit. And that, you're in the middle of all of that. But you're not moving. You're standing completely still. You are unmoved. You are immovable. With all the chaos going on, the people coming and going, the wind blowing, the noise, the electricity, that chaotic feel. The weather is coming at you. The wind, the storm is coming at you. And yet you are focused and standing right where you want to be. And you're not going anywhere. That immovable man or woman, with all of that going on around them, that's in a nutshell. That's an even if faith. It's that faith that is completely focused. It's not distracted, immovable. And when God gave me that vision, I was like, well, that's a better definition than I could ever come up with. And how gracious of him to just give me that picture of what he wants it to look like for us to have a litany of things going on around us and yet be completely immovable and totally focused and calm. Just standing where God has us. So when we move into this series and we are going to start talking about some of this stuff, I hope you can sense in me how God has been working in me to pull this and bring this to you. And as I was preparing for what we're talking about today, I think it's important for you to know that I have laughed and said many a times that I wish that I had had an even if kind of faith my whole life, but I haven't. I lived a good portion of my life completely saved, salvation not an issue, and yet was being tossed around by everything that came my way. If it was a bad situation or it was another person that was bringing some chaos into my life, if it was any kind of my emotions were off the chain, for lack of a better word. Is that still the thing you say? I don't think people still say off the chain, but it was off the chain at times. It's just that I lived my life without that. So I know the difference, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying, let's get something real straight here, okay? I don't have this all together. I am honestly a hot mess express now. I just got more Jesus, and I have started turning it in a different direction than I used to turn it. Is that fair? Does that make sense? I think we can all be like, we're all on this journey together. It would be horrible for you to think that, oh yeah, Kristi's just over here talking like she's got it all together, because I guarantee you I do not. I come to you as someone who is also wrestling with how to live out this even if kind of faith. What I know now is I've lived without it, but once you taste it and you start living differently, you want more of it. Does that make sense? So I'm not coming to you as somebody who's figured it all out. I'm coming to you as someone who loves you enough to say, I know what it's like to go without it. So maybe let's see what we can do. Let's all link arms and start trying to figure out how to live a more spirit-filled life, how to have more faith and be more immovable. More immovable? Is that a word? Be immovable. Let's just cut to the chase. I want to be immovable in my faith. I want to be so solid that those who know me don't question where I am spiritually. Like, I want people to know that I'm spiritually solid. And I think for me to be real with you, I want to tell you about a point where I realized that I was not at all even close to being spiritually solid. I was saved. I accepted Christ when I was 8 at church camp in Luther's Avoca Baptist encampment. And so my salvation has been secure for decades. But we can live our lives saved and yet not spiritually mature. So in 2018, on January the 1st, 2018, I woke up with the most righteous hangover you can even fathom. So think about the worst hangover. If you are an alcohol consumer, if you have ever over-imbibed, you might have experienced a hangover. And if you haven't ever experienced a hangover, just think about like having the flu and the room spinning still. Like, that should get it in a nutshell. All right. I woke up feeling like that, which is awesome on New Year's Day. And like, I was like, wow, that's great. Like, super, super great. Okay. Real mature, Kristi, real mature. When I woke up, at some point that morning, the thought rolled through my mind, something has to change. I had, for the past 18 months or so, been drinking significantly more than I had ever consumed in my life. Now, I told you at the top of the show that we were going to talk about alcohol here, and I'm going to take a pause here, okay? There's a segment of us in the Christian world that are believers that do drink, and I'm not, like I said, not here to talk about theology, but what I am here to talk about is that the people, there is a group of people, and you might be one of these people if you were listening to this, that consumes alcohol, is not addicted like in a she has become an alcoholic kind of way, but it's become a habitual thing. It's become a thing that has kind of crossed over that line from just, oh, well, I drink every now and then, to I drink every day, or I drink almost every day, or I do drink every day, and maybe I have a couple of drinks every day. Maybe I really want to have a couple of drinks every day. See, there's this spectrum of alcohol consumption that most of us find ourselves on, either from nothing to raging alcoholic, And somewhere in the middle, there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily addicted to alcohol, but they might be using it a little bit more than they should. Okay? And in 2018, when I woke up hungover, I had for the past 18 months or so been drinking way more than I needed to be drinking. And it had started out, I had something happen in 2016 that kind of precipitated that. And we'll talk more about that another day. But this event happened and I began to drink more. I had been a drinker, like as in like have a glass of wine here or a margarita here, or that had never been a big deal to me. And I had not ever struggled truly with any kind of an addiction component in that way. So this is not somebody coming to you going, well, I was an alcoholic and then I had something happen and then I started drinking more. No, I really wasn't that big of a drinker. But in 2016, some things happened and my life altered its course pretty radically. And instead of trusting God and letting Him handle it and leaning into Him for it, I did what every unhealthy Enneagram 7 person does, is I tried to numb it, because that's what Enneagram 7s do. I know there's like this whole thing, Christians think that Enneagram is evil. I don't know if it's evil or not. I don't know. All I know is that I am a 7 and it is absolutely 100% me to a T. When I get stressed, I want to numb it. I want to avoid it. I want to ignore it. I want to go around it. I do not want to go through it. And so I began to deal with my pain I was in. I was in a lot of pain, emotional pain, not physical pain, but emotional pain. I was in a really, really dark place, rightfully so. Okay. It was a really traumatic thing to go through. But I began to sink into a depression, and I began to use alcohol to numb the pain I was in. And it started out 1 glass a night. And then 1 glass a night became 2 glasses of wine a night. And then 2 glasses of wine became 3. And then before I knew it, I had never been able to, but I could drink a whole bottle of wine and be like, hey, that's no big deal. And that was over about the course of 18 months. And so the fall of 2017, I started thinking, I think I might be drinking a little bit too much here. Yeah, no, right? Like, oh, well, reality, huh? It was so much more than what I had ever been comfortable drinking. For me, okay? And so I start going, I don't know. Nobody said anything to me. There hadn't been an intervention or anything. And I mean, I kind of justified it. If you really want to know the honest truth, I kind of justified it because I was like, well, I mean, I kind of have had a pretty crappy 18 months. I mean, somebody else might be in a ditch drunk, blah, 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 or whatever. I justified the snot out of it. But in my heart and in my spirit, I knew that I was not doing what I needed to do. And so as the fall of 2017 drew closer to Christmas, somewhere along the way, I believe that the Lord prompted me. Now, I don't remember where I was, okay? But somewhere along the way that fall, I felt this thought come to me. That's the only way I have to describe it, of what if you went a whole year and didn't drink? Okay. Well, I mean, I know I'm drinking too much. I know that this is probably, I don't need to be drinking this much. Why go a whole, okay, maybe I am drinking. Okay, I wonder what that would be like. So it was like this progression within me that went, I wonder what it would be like to go an entire year and not have 1 ounce of alcohol. And so I mean, like, I tossed it around a little bit, like, that would be an interesting challenge. So it wasn't like I was having some spiritual aha moment, like, oh my gosh, Jesus and I can have a kumbaya for a whole year. I mean, sign me up. I mean, no, it was not like that. Not even close. It was like, oh, that's a dare. And I think it's kind of funny. I think God knows how to motivate us. I think he knows exactly how to intimately get under our skin. And thank goodness, thank God, literally, for the Holy Spirit who prompted me to go a year with no alcohol. So wake up, New Year's Day, hungover, feeling like dog crap. And I said the words, something has to change. And so full confession, I laid on the couch that day. I didn't do anything that day. I mean, not a thing. I think I do remember at one point I went and got like leftovers out of the fridge and kind of like pulled leftovers out. And then I went back under the blanket on the couch and I proceeded to finish laying there the entire day. It was my finest moment, honestly, just finest moment. The next day, on January the 2nd, I opened up a fresh Word document on my computer at my desk, and I typed at the top of it, 2018, the year I didn't drink. And I started January 2nd, just writing about not drinking. Like, maybe I should go a year. And so I made the commitment there. I'm going to go a year. I'm not going to drink. And what I know now is that was the moment. I think my yes, I think it ushered in a healing and a season that God could use. Because what I believe fully, and this is not an original teaching, somebody taught me this a long time ago, is that your one yes is the way that God can often speak to us in other areas that we're refusing to acknowledge or deal with. So I was willing to turn over drinking to him with this 1-year challenge. And that yes changed my life. There's no other way to, that is probably not even an overestimation. I was on a track that was not going to end well. I was heading on a course that was not going in the right direction. And I knew something had to give. And so that yes, that sitting with him and saying, all right, I won't drink for a year. And the way I process things, I like to write. I've loved to write for years and years. I used to have a blog. I've done, back when the blog thing was all the rage, and I still have a blog. Shameless plug, if you want to go on the Even If podcast website and subscribe to it, you can get it every week. That was shameless, y'all. That was absolutely shameless. But I do love to write, and actually, writing is what I love to call my secret sauce. It's the way I've processed things for years. I'm a journaler. I love to journal. I love to write. That's how I can take this ADD brain of mine. I think they call it ADHD now, but when I was diagnosed, it was ADD. That's how my mind can actually process things. And so I just began to every day, I'd go in there and I'd sit down and I'd write. And some days I'd write more about the not drinking, a lot, especially at first. It was like, hey, look, I've been 7 days and I didn't have a drink. And 7 days turned into 30 days. And then 30 days turned into 3 months. And one of the funniest moments, I have to share this with y'all because it was such an adventure. Like, it really did turn into an adventure because, whenever you tell people you go to a party or you're with people who you used to drink with, and then you're like, no, I'm not drinking. No, I'm not going to drink. There were like two reactions. There were people who were like, okay. And then there were people that were like, why? Are you okay? I didn't know you were an alcoholic. And I was like, when you're trying to tell people, you're like, no, I really wasn't an alcoholic, but I sure was using it more than I should. Anyways, that summer of 2018, I went on this trip with these ladies, and some of them were drinkers. I didn't care. Like, it didn't bother me if anybody drank in front of me. I didn't give a rip if you drank. But this lady pulls me aside and she says, hey, she was like, hey, you're not drinking, right? And I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. And she goes, okay, well, I'll order a drink and we can share it. And I go, no, that's okay. I don't. And she goes, well, you can at least have a sip. And I go, no, I'm really okay. And so I told her, I was like, well, I'm going to go a whole year and not drink. And this was like July by the time this part happened. And she goes, you're going to go a whole year? Like, it was like this look. She just looked at me like, oh my gosh, are you going to make it? It's like, yeah, I'll be okay. I'll be fine. In fact, I'm going to be better than fine. I'm going to be better than okay. It's part of my story. It took me a long time to be able to talk about it. Partly because every person who quits drinking, like if you tell people that you've quit drinking, they automatically assume you were an alcoholic when sometimes you were just drinking more than you needed to be drinking. Now, there are people who do have they have an addictive personality. They do not need to drink alcohol. You know how I think it's 1 Corinthians 6 says that everything is lawful, but not everything is beneficial. And there are things in this world that we have to know what is a yes and what is a hard stop for us. So I want it known for the record, there is a group of people that do not need to ever drink a drop of alcohol. Okay? And you might be wondering why I would bring this story out first. Like, well, let's start this out with a bang. Why? Why talk about this first? And I will tell you, full confession. Again, I'm with these full confessions. Have y'all noticed in the past couple of weeks, I keep saying full confession. Well, full confession. I recorded an entire episode yesterday. And I brushed past this story because I didn't want to talk about it yet. I got through the entire episode about what I thought God wanted me to use. And I've been in prayer over this, guys. Do not think that I am not praying. Oh my gosh, y'all. Oh, I have never been so desperate for God to show up in my entire life as I have been in these past few weeks sitting with him with this. And so yesterday, I did this entire episode. I breezed right past this part of the story. And I get done with it. And within about 30 minutes, I felt the Lord say, no, you're going to have to talk about it. And what I've said before here on the show is, it's real easy to talk about the ways that other people have hurt us or the other ways people have failed us, but it's really, really hard for us to talk publicly about the ways that we have just totally failed, that we have just fallen flat on our face. I think it's easy for us to just brush past the things that we've done. It's easy to talk about our pain when it's something that happened to us, but it's very difficult to just come on a show and say, here's what I did. This is how I messed up. This is where I got off track. And this is me. I got off track. I lost my focus. I started looking at my pain. I started looking at the pain of what had happened in 2016. And instead of putting Jesus between me and what happened in 2016, I put him on the sidelines and it was like, yeah, you let this happen. I was mad at him. We're going to talk more about being mad at God. Don't worry. So if you're mad at God right now, stay tuned. We're going to get there, okay? But I had to come to a place where I was open to letting God talk to me and minister to me and start to heal the wounds that I had been ignoring, I had been numbing myself so much with alcohol and running away from this wound. And it was a legit wound. And so when I stripped away alcohol and I stripped away the numbing, the ability to numb myself, what I found was that the wound was still totally there. But he started beginning to tend to the wound and the reason why I was drinking. And what I've realized a lot of times is that when we are doing anything to distract ourselves, like intentionally distract ourselves, even if it's subconsciously, but if we're doing things to distract ourselves, more often than not, there's a reason for what we're doing. There's a reason for it. And I think the reason why God told me yesterday after I'd done that entire other episode, I think the reason why God said, I need you to start here. You got to start with this alcohol thing that you did, is to, one, tell you, this is me. This is what I did. This is how I fell apart. I was totally depressed. It was the darkest season of my entire life. I would lay on the couch for hours during the day, sometimes in my pajamas. And I would, until it was pretty much time to go get the kids and get dressed, go pick up the kids, and then come home, pour a glass of wine. And I've written before, and I'll say it here, I'm not proud of this season, but I think it's part of my story, and I think it's something that somebody else needs to hear. And I wonder if you have ever experienced a moment where you've been distracted. You've lost your focus. It doesn't, if you're not saved, we need to have a different conversation. But I'm assuming that within the context of salvation, that you're a believer and you love Jesus. But somewhere along the way, you've lost your focus. And it can be inadvertent. It can be a drifting. You just haven't, you quit that small group or that Bible study, and then you just didn't really find another one, or you moved and you didn't find another church to start going to, or you've had a sick kid, or you're taking care of a parent, and you're in the throes of a season of life that has just left little to nothing in the tank. And I think distraction isn't always falling off the wagon or something huge. Sometimes it's just we've lost our first love. And Jesus is our first love. He loved us before we knew we even needed him. He loved us first. It's not that we loved him and he was like, yeah, I think I'll love y'all back. No, he loves us first. Before the foundations of the world were this set, he saw us, you and me, which kind of blows my mind. I'm like, you're just amazing. He's just amazing. Sometimes I think, I've thought about why do we lose our focus? And besides just the what has caused us to lose our focus, it could be, work, job, school, family, and trauma. It could be pain you're in. It could be a lot of things. But I think sometimes it can be overwhelm or anxiety. It can be depression. It can be problems or fear. It could be worry. I mentioned earlier, it could be angry at God. Things haven't gone our way. Over these past few months, I've said things to you like, he's so faithful. And I've found him to be so faithful. Well, this was where that began. Because in 2018, when I started this process and I went through, and I went the whole year. I did not drink at all in 2018, journaled the whole year. God just began to heal the pain within me. And I came back to the place where I knew who my first love was. And I have figured out for me that it really was not an addiction, like as in an alcohol addiction. And this is why I think we have got to get healthy, is because it wouldn't have mattered if it was alcohol or pornography or shopping or food or gambling or sex or whatever. It could have been a lot of things. Alcohol was just what it was. It wouldn't have mattered what it was if I had not gotten healthy and I had not turned toward him and said, okay, you can have your way here. I don't think it would have mattered what it was. I could have quit drinking alcohol, and it would have eventually become something else. Can you hear what I'm saying there? I need to make sure you hear this. I could have stopped drinking alcohol, but had I not turned to Jesus and put him in place of what I was doing to numb myself, I would have ended up doing something else. I could have gritted my teeth. Is it grit my teeth or gritted my teeth? Some English teacher here is going to be sending me a language book here soon, I'm pretty sure. I could have grit my teeth and strong-willed, armed, whatever, myself through not drinking. But inevitably, I would have started to numb myself again if I hadn't taken this to Jesus. If I had not filled that void, and I wonder if that's a word for somebody else right now, that there is a void or there is a wound in you and you are using something other than Jesus, other than your focus on him. You're letting something else either fill that void or numb that void. And it's never going to heal. I'm just going to be real honest with you. It's going to get worse until you start putting him in place, putting him in the proper position between you and it. Sometimes there are wounds that only God can heal. And if we try to heal them ourselves or sew those up ourselves, whew, it's going to look like you slept at a Holiday Inn last night. That's all I'm going to say about that. I want to wrap up. We're going longer than I normally go on an episode. But I want us to have a faith that's not affected by our circumstances. I want to have that immovable faith that isn't distracted, that doesn't stumble, that doesn't end up in the middle of that nasty, dark pit that I ended up in. I don't want that for anybody. I don't want it for you. I don't want it for your family. I don't want it for my worst enemy. I don't want it for anybody. I love you guys. Man, I love you. I hope you can see that there's definitely a difference between this story and the stories from the summer, right? We're a long ways away from me stealing cars, aren't we? It was a fun summer, wasn't it? But I think it's time for us to get to business. It's time for us to start growing up in some places. You know, I debated on whether or not as we end this, to share with you where I am now with alcohol. And I decided that I would tell you. And the reason why I'm going to tell you is because I don't know if this will help somebody else. And I will do it for the one person who needs help. The question that has been asked to me is, do you still drink alcohol? And my answer is yes. Sometimes yes. The difference is that alcohol no longer has a hold. It does not have a hold on me. But I've also put some parameters in place. And this is going to sound really rudimentary, but maybe this will help somebody else, okay? I have come up with a number, a healthy boundary. And at the beginning of every year, I have a calendar in my kitchen. And I keep track. If I have a drink of alcohol, I mark it on a calendar. And you might be like, oh my gosh, this is the most rudimentary, I can't believe she's telling me this. But do you know that whenever you make something visible, it's like people who keep track of their food log, they lose more weight. When people write down their to-do list, they're more productive. People who write things down get more done. But it's part of it is that we have something of an accountability. But the other is I'm just so visual. I have to be able to see something. I have to be able to go, okay, that's the last time I did that. And so alcohol is now something that is just a fun occasional thing. And so if you ever see me out, or we're at like a fundraiser together, or we're somewhere and I have a thing of alcohol, I don't want you to think I've fallen off the wagon. I'm not, you don't need to have an intervention. I promise you it's going to go home. It's going to get a mark on the calendar. So everybody knows, yep, and it counts towards my days. And I'm saying this to you so you know this is like real life. And I never want to be in that place again. Ever. Nothing gets my affection over Jesus. Nothing. Am I perfect in this? No, absolutely not. And I'll tell you, there was one last year. It was a crazy season. It was a crazy season, just that the chaos, and you're going to this party and then you're going to this party and then you've got family in and you've got this in. And I had a whole bunch of X's on the calendar that month. And I looked at it and I went, whoa, I don't like that. Back off. Nothing gets my affection. I will not be distracted. He wants us immovable. He wants us in the midst of chaos and confusion and the darkness of this world. He wants us immovable, rock solid, focused on Him. So this week, that's your challenge. Stay focused on Him. Spend some time with Him. Pray. Pray. Say, God, I want more of this. I want this, Lord. What do I need to do, Lord? What is mine? What I've said to you today, my part of my story may not be yours. But more than likely, there's something that He's just saying, come here, give that to me. You don't have to carry that. Come here, let me help you. And so whatever that is, I am actively praying for every single person who listens to this episode. And I can't wait to see what God does through this. So I'm gonna get us out of here, y'all, because I know good and well you've spent way too much time with me already. And so I'm gonna let you go get on with your day. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. And truly, good Lord willing, I will see you all next week.